Listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Week 3 Enterprise Assessment of the Whole Farm Planning course. We're happy to have you with us tonight and hope that you had a great Thanksgiving break. This is Colette D. Phelps, and I'll be your moderator today. Again, I wanted to go over some webinar tips. To optimize your viewing of our webinar tonight, please close all the other programs on your computer, and if you run into any problems with your sound, you can call in using the call-in number provided in your welcome email, and then please remember to mute the computer sound when using the phone. You can type in questions for the speakers into your questions box, both for help with any viewing or sound problems you have and questions that we'll answer in between our presentations tonight. So tonight, Cinda's going to give a general overview of some things to consider with enterprise assessment, and Melissa is going to talk specifically about livestock enterprise assessment, and Jessica will be talking about crop enterprise assessment, and I'll be facilitating tonight's webinar. So here's Cinda, our first speaker, talking about enterprise requirements and selection.
Thank you, Colette. Welcome, everybody, to our webinar tonight. Good to be back with you, and I think we have an interesting evening tonight to talk about looking at what types of enterprises. Last time you looked at your resources, what you have, and I know a lot of you have done your assignments and are filling out the worksheets, and we are going to get to those, and we'll be reviewing and commenting on what you have done so far. But now we're looking at specific enterprises. You may have already an enterprise that you're doing and you may want to add something, or you may be very much at the beginning stage and are just looking for what fits you best. And that's what we're trying to help you with, is assessing the feasibility. So what type of information do you need? Well, you basically the more information the better. You need to probably identify some specific production guides for the particular crop or animal that you want to focus on to see how well that fits with your resources. The guides, publications, and we're directing you to some of those as we go along. But these will detail the requirements for growing conditions, the climate, the soil, water, equipment, planting, and those types of things that you will need. And for livestock, for instance, it'll also include feed and fencing and facility needs, that type of thing. But you'll also be evaluating the labor requirements for your enterprise and any regulation or laws that you need to be aware of related to your enterprise. We'll also be looking at marketing information. In the next week, we'll have a focus on direct and semi-direct marketing strategies, and we'll also, talk a little bit about evaluating your market. What is the competition doing? What is the going price of similar products to what you're going to have? How do other people market the type of product you have? And finally, we'll ask you to develop a budget, which involves the income and expense projections, so we'll call that an enterprise budget, so that you will start thinking about the volume per acre or the foot per row of product and the costs associated with raising that product, and looking at selling price and associated returns. So we won't get into depth of the economics and the feasibility of your enterprise as you would in doing a business plan, but we're going to give you the first pieces of that and get you at least familiar with how you can use enterprise budgets. Okay. When we're talking about information gathering, you can get a lot of information with production guides, but you're going to also be gathering primary data. We call secondary data what you get out of publications that's already been generated by research and experience from other people. But you're going to also need to be gathering your own data, and we call that primary information. A lot of what you're going to find about your particular enterprise, you're going to learn through experience on your farm. No matter what other people do on their farm and in their operation, even when you adopt that to your certain situation, it's going to be a little bit different because you have different climate, different soils, everything. So you're going to be generating some of your primary data. We talk about this primary and secondary a lot with marketing, for instance. Businesses are successful because people went out of the way to find everything they could about their product, their customers, their regional demographics, and the trends in the marketplace and the competition, and you're going to look at that. But then you also might want to do your own survey. You know, have you ever gone to a farmer's market and seen people giving out samples? In a way, that's primary data because you're collecting data on what your customers want, and so how they react to the products that you give them a sample of, whether it's a taste of your meat or cooked meat or a taste of a piece of fruit or whatever. You're gathering your own primary data. So just remember that you can get a lot of information through secondary sources, but you'll also need to be testing. And you'll also, a very key thing is to get out there, like if you think, oh, I might be able to sell at the local Whole Foods market, how are you going to make sure that you can sell there? You're going to go ask them. So that's what I mean by primary data. You're going to have to be doing a lot of that yourself. Okay, next slide. So this isn't one of the books that we gave you, the You Can Farm, the Entrepreneur's Guide to Start and Succeed in a Farming Enterprise by Joel Salatin, but it is a very good book. I've used it before in this class as just a resource for me, the instructor. I would check it out if you're looking and interested in buying more books. I don't know what y'all know about Joel Salatin, but he's a very interesting gentleman and, of course, one of our experts in sustainable farming. I mean, we look at him as like the sustainable farming guru, I guess you could say. But this particular book, I don't know how many of you have read his books, but he has at least a dozen, if not more. And this book is one of the older ones. This was written in '98. But it has a very good presentation of information and reasonings behind his choices of enterprises. And so I wanted to go through some of that with you right now. And even though, he's in Virginia, this seems to apply across the country for the most part. There may be things that he mentions that aren't that key here, but most of them are. Okay, he defines the centerpiece enterprise as the mainstay of the farm. And what's interesting about this is, he goes through this and talks about what the centerpiece centerpiece enterprises and then complementary enterprises. And it's funny because he has almost every one of these enterprises on his farm, so I'm not sure what he would call his centerpiece because he does everything. But anyway, so the next slide, Colette. I cannot see the slides. I'm hoping we're on criteria for making the list. So what did he base these centerpiece enterprises on? And these are some of the things: the startup costs, the high profit margin, and what you can see there, cash flow. Some of the other things are a history of high success rates, high demand and low supply. That's kind of obvious. And as you're looking around where you live, seeing what other people are doing, you know, that's also the way you identify your niche. That people aren't growing very much of that, and there seems to be a high demand. And another thing is to look at is what's going on in different parts of the country that maybe we haven't caught up to in Idaho. So look at those high product distinctiveness, and one of our biggest in raising things sustainably, and you yourself are one of the things that make your product most distinct. So we have to learn how to tell our story and why the sheep we raise on this ranch in this valley are different from the sheep or the corn or whatever that's raised by somebody else somewhere else. So you tell your story, and it's like branding your product. So that's what he means by high product distinctiveness. And the other thing is relatively size-neutral profit potential. In other words, the profit margins do not decrease with a smaller enterprise. And that's important for us, those of you anyway, that have smaller enterprises. Okay, next slide. So his top 8 centerpiece enterprises are listed here. I'm going to go through each of these. We know there's a big demand for broilers. People are looking for safely produced meat products, and the demand for chicken is high. It's low startup cost compared to bigger livestock, and it's a quick cash turnaround. It can be done in a lot of different, with a lot of different resources availability. One thing that has changed, I think, for some people since this book is feed costs are quite expensive, and that makes it difficult for people in certain areas, but that's something to look into. Eggs is another one that's people are looking for alternatives to the eggs they can buy in the store. They want fresher eggs, and this is something that can be done with limited infrastructure or costs, and it has a good profit ratio. And he says you can usually command 2 to 3 times the price of commercial eggs because of the quality. And it kind of depends on where you live, but those are things to look at. Okay, what he calls salad bar beef, if you know about him, that he wrote a book called Salad Bar Beef, and the reason he calls it salad bar beef is because he raises his cattle on land or pasture that's a mixture of, I think it's like 21 different grasses and forages mixed, and so it's a salad